This is Jamie Drummond for Good Food Revolution. I am joined today all the way from Okanagan by none other than Justin Drake Hall, winemaker at Nk'Mip Cellars in BC. How are you today, sir?
Awesome. You even pronounced the name right, which I'm very, very happy.
Oh,
Nk'Mip
good.
is it's our actual ancestral territory, and people always thought it meant where the lakes meet or the river meets the lake, and it kind of does, but it's really a very specific spot here in Osoyoos where our tribe could narrow down an exact area of where can we meet, when the first snow flies. And this is our traditional winter grounds here in Osoyoos, southern Okanagan, because it's one of the warmest places in Canada. So Nk'Mip Cellars.
And so I was of the understanding that Nk'Mip meant bottom land because it was at the very bottom there.
Exactly. But it's lost in translation. There is no exact translation. It would be like saying, hey, I'm going to meet you in Toronto, or let's say Ontario. And you're like, wow, Justin, that's pretty vast. When the first snow flies, where can we meet? Well, I'll meet you in Toronto. That's still huge. There's just no way we're gonna pass paths. All right, I'll meet you in the north end of Toronto. I don't know what it's exactly called, somethingville maybe. And you go, man, that's still 40
still
square
too vague,
kilometers.
Yeah.
Where can we meet? Give me a street name. We'll meet on 4th and 5th on Cambie in Vancouver. There you go. Right. It's an exact designation, and it's a very small spot of land at the bottomland, the head of the lake, the last spot in southern Canada. Yes, but what it means is a specific area. And so our people would meet there when the first or second snow flied, might be October, November, and that's where we would spend our time together.
Thank you for correcting me there. Okay, so we're going to get into the origin story of Nk'Mip Cellars, but first let's get into your origin story. I was thinking about questions to ask you. Can you remember your very first taste of wine?
Yep. There was multiple firsts, of course. So my mom's got a Scottish background, actually. So I went to Quebec and I lived with her in Montreal for a few years. And the family there on the odd occasion, Easter, maybe Easter dinner or Thanksgiving, Christmas dinners, they would have wines at the table. And it was terrible. It was just cheap, white wine from Montreal. I don't even remember what it was. It was probably 10 years old. Right. And it's very normal for all the kids to have a very small glass, very small, like a few sips. And most of us actually hated it. But we thought it was, I don't know if we thought it was cool or what it was, maybe just tradition of the family from the old world. And so we gave it a little go. I didn't really care for it. A few years later, many years later, actually, I was probably around 15. We decided to get into my aunt's cellar, and she had a little bit of Merlot, and there was red everywhere the next morning.
Yes.
It was a very uneducated tasting, let's call it. More consumption than a tasting. Now, my very first tasting after that, I had nothing to do with wine until I was about 24 years old, 23, 24. I actually showed up here at Nk'Mip Cellars after several months of asking for a position here. I was working at a golf course during the summer months, which is very seasonal in the Okanagan Valley because we're a full 4-season continent. And so I said, I had a young family at the time. I got to get something going here. I didn't think of a career. I just thought a full-time job was good enough for me then. And I came into the tasting bar something like January 11th, 2023. I think this is my 20th anniversary this year. And I tried a Merlot on the front tasting bar, and I spit it out, and I was like, nope, still don't like Merlot. It's like red wine is terrible. But when I was driving home, which is, you drive through Osoyoos, I don't know, let's call it 10 minutes of drive. There was this berry flavor in my mouth. And I was thinking, did I chew bubble gum or something along the lines? I couldn't figure out what it was. And so about you know, that after that 10 minutes, I really thought, this is interesting. I want to try this again. The only thing I had last was red wine. And I thought, this is something I got to do again. I came in the next day, I tried it again, I spit it out and I said, nope, still hate it. But I found Chardonnay, and Chardonnay was one of the first wine that I actually loved. We had a fairly oaky Chardonnay back then, but it was fantastic.
So did your appreciation of wine, your proper appreciation of wine, really begin to evolve once you started as a cellar rat at the winery?
I've called myself a cellar rat many times, and it's always a funny one. They're like, Justin, you can't say that on camera, but I am. Absolutely. You know, within 4 days of starting here at the winery, I knew I wanted to be in this as a career. I didn't know exactly what. I enjoyed dragging hoses. 4 days. It was very interesting. So I called the local college, which was Okanagan College, now UBC, in Penticton, about 30, 40 minutes from here. And I just said, listen, do you guys have any winemaking courses? What do you have? What are the options? And they said, yeah, we're midway through the semester, so I'm sorry, you can't start. And I said, I want to start now. I'm not asking if you're midway through. I want to start. I want to get into this. I don't want to mess around. I'm going to miss out on it. I really felt like I had an urgent need to do it, which was very interesting because I met a lot of people in that. Okanagan was still fairly young at this time. The program was just growing, and now a lot of the people that I met in those classes, winemaking and viticulture, which was a 2-year program, evenings and weekends. So I worked full 8 hours a day, and then I went to school on the evenings and weekends. I met them, and they've now started wineries, and I've seen them out in the industry. I'm like, these were the really not the beginning, but sort of still the beginning days of the industry where people went out and actually started, Laughing Stock Cellars, Foxtrot Vineyards. There was quite a few of them. Awesome experience. And now yes, we tasted wines a lot, and I grew a passion for wine immediately.
Now, you were a mechanic before you moved into a winery. Were there any transferable skills there?
Absolutely. And I tell youth this from our tribe. I'm part of the Osuyas Indian Band. If you're going to go to school, just take something. I know people have a passion, which is good, but try to think out of the box and take something that's going to be transferable into the future. Again, mechanics, business management, you can go anywhere in the world. There's cars, there's something we worked on. And here in the winery, it's basically, you have pumps, you have glycol systems, you have chilling systems, on and on and on, heating systems. So when they break down, I can fix pretty much, I'd say 50% of the problems, and the rest I can send out maybe for repairs. But normally I can just, get through the system, take it apart, put it back together. Bob's your uncle, away you go.
Very cool. Now, I was actually quite surprised to read that your band had been planting grapes in the region way back from 1968 or thereabouts.
1968, the very, very beginning of the Osuyas Indian Band in Nk'Mip Cellars, further in history, of course. Our tribe used to travel down. Now, Washington is very, very close. I'm about maybe maximum a 10-minute drive from the border. You can almost throw a rock over the border and get in trouble. You're attacking our country. So, as you're here in Canada, of course, you're on the tip of winemaking, of course, as well. There's not a lot of area to grow wine here in Canada, but the further south you go, it quickly warms up down into Washington. And so back then it was more fruit trees and things like that. But before free trade, the fruits down there were getting riper faster. And so you would travel to the United States and work. Our people used to be extremely hard workers back in the 40s, 50s, 60s. And so they would travel because there wasn't a lot of industry up here for work. So they would leave their families at home. And our tribe eventually got together. It was one chief and one council member back then. And they said, listen, our people are very, very close. You see in the movies, we're nomadic. We stay as a tribe. We literally have things called tribes. Why? Because we are together. We're stronger as one. And so they said, we got to put something here in place where these family members are staying home. We need to create something for our tribe members. And they thought, went through, I don't know, tomato farming, on and on and on. And they finally decided on grapes. We have fairly rocky, arid soils, some sandy soils, dusty, loamy soils, and grapes grow perfect in all those conditions. Of course, back then they were more hybrids and things like that. But they did plant, don't quote me exactly, I think it was 200 varieties the very first year. And like 90% of them died. They're like, okay, these are the 20 varieties that are left. And let's grow from there, which was Riesling. You had Ehrenfelser. There was a few Chancellor and things like that, hybrids as well. But in 77, we actually started planting. That was the first plantings of Riesling and Ehrenfelser, and we still use those vines today.
And it's some of the oldest rootstock in North America, I believe.
Oh, probably some of, absolutely. I'm not going to boast the oldest, but there is some original Chancellor vines that are still there. I think they have 10 rows roughly, and they refuse to pull them out. They're on an old T-bar system. We just keep it for, heritage really. And, a lot of people come by like, you should pull those out and grow whatever, a big red in there. You have, maybe an acre of property. Like, no, there's a reason. And we keep it there for heritage. Yep, absolutely.
So how did the concept of Nk'Mip Cellars come about?
Oh, well, we had our original 300 acres on that we had leased out. We were growing our own 300 acres, which is Nk'Mip Vineyards in Oliver. And we became a joint venture with Arterra back in 2000.
That was when they were Vincor.
Vincor, at the time. And Don Triggs owned Jackson & Triggs, and we leased a bit of land to them. They have a winery on our property as well. So we have 34,000 acres of land. Jackson Triggs had some of that land. And then Vincor came and approached the Oswego City man and Clarence Louis, who was our chief, and said, listen, you guys are growing. At that point, we had, I don't even know, we'll get to that. I don't know the exact percentage, probably 3% of BC's grapes, which is not very much. But when they approached us and said, listen, we want to lease, I think it was almost 1,000 acres, 900 acres roughly, 2 vineyards, which is Bear Cub and Bull Pine. We want to lease this land from you, and we'll pay you X amount of dollars for the next 30 years. And at the end of the contract, it's all yours, 100% yours. It comes back to the tribe. And so this was the beginning of one of the first, second deal, other than the original Nk'Mip Vineyards. We decided to joint venture on another project. And they said, yeah, we'll lease this land to you. No problem. We had to go through a referendum through our people. But at the same time, we want a winery out of this. We want to have our own brand. We want an Nk'Mip Cellars brand to put our tribe's name out there.
Right.
Eventually now we have around 20,000 cases roughly. Times 12, every single bottle that goes out in British Columbia is a symbol of our business. That's our tribe. And we have a lot of passion for it.
And it was the first owned and operated by Indigenous peoples in North America, I believe.
Yep. Cherry Point was a little bit later. I think that one ended up not working. They were a fruit winery. We now have Indigenous Wines, or Indigenous World, which is in West Kelowna, owned by the ex-chief there. It's a personally owned winery, not a tribe's winery, but I think he's successful there as well.
And how many of your tribe work at the winery? Is the majority of the labor force from your tribe?
Oh, no. The people that are basically working now, most Canadians in general, don't really enjoy outdoor hard labor, and vineyards can be quite labor intensive. I spent a year in the vineyard as well. Again, get in touch. You can't be a winemaker if you don't know what you're growing, what you're talking about. So I spent a year out in the vineyard. Of course, I did study in New Zealand as well at Lincoln University, but you need to get that hands-on to really know what you're doing.
Right.
And yes, there are tribe members. I don't know how many exactly, but we do have, roughly 1,300 to 1,500 acres of land that's managed by several different managers. We have 300 acres in Oliver that are owned by us, 350 actually, And then we have a little bit of outsourcings that we actually own and we just lease to Arterra through our own. And then Arterra leases some through us, which is about 900 acres as well.
Right.
So I don't know. I don't know exactly. 10, 20, 30?
I see. I see.
We're about 600 tribe members, so not that many really.
So when you came on board, Randy Picton was the winemaker, and you went on to have a fantastic 20-year relationship with him. You're still friends, I believe.
Absolutely. There was 3 of us in the beginning, Randy Picton, Aaron Cray, and myself, and we worked together for 18 solid years. Group of 3, we just, you could read each other's mind by the end of it. And then in 2021, they both left me. Randy retired and Aaron moved on to Nk'Mip Cellars. And I just started a new team. Like, here you go, Justin. We're all out of here. It's all yours. Oh,
now,
boy.
you've expressed that as well as being a mentor, he was almost a kind of father figure to you.
Absolutely. Well, again, I was only 23, 24 when I started here.
Right.
So I didn't really have a clue of what I was going to be doing in life. The career potential came in around, I think, the 5th year. After 5 years experience, you can join university, which was Lincoln University. And I guess my boss had a mentorship program he was trying to work on, Randy. And he said, listen, do you want to drag hoses for the rest of your life? And I was like, yeah, I love winemaking. He's like, no, what I mean is, do you want to maybe grow into something else, into an actual winemaker? And I was like, okay, what do I do? And he said, find a university, sign up, and get through the program. So they actually fully paid sponsorship to school. Went to Lincoln University again in 2009 after it was around 6-7 years of experience by that time. Went and got my diploma in viticulture and enology, and I came back in 2010. I was given assistant winemaker. So I started making some of the white wines, Pinot Blanc and Dreamcatcher. Pinot Blanc was my very first wine. And then in 2016, I was promoted to white winemaker. So I made all the white wines. And by 2021, I'm estate winemaker. I make everything now.